Welcome back. In the last lecture, we already talked about early estimates. So there are two specific methods that we mentioned in the lecture notes. That's rough order magnitude and cubic foot and square foot footage cost estimate. Those are for early estimate. And we also talk about weighted average unit cost. So those are the ones oftentimes you already have very good historical data for you to forecast the future project cost. And today in this lecture, we are going to talk about detailed cost estimates. From the previous lecture, we know we can use assembly and unit price for detailed cost estimate. But here in this lecture, we are just going to focus on the unit price for detailed cost estimate. Of course, you can always use the assembly. A lot of companies, if they already have those assembly or unit price from their previous projects, they can always use that. Here, I would like to emphasize that if we say unit price, I'm talking about detailed cost estimate. But if I'm saying unit cost, I'm referring to the conceptual cost estimate or early estimate. So try to distinguish those two concepts a little bit. You may encounter this in your quiz. We try to differentiate unit price and unit cost. Unit cost is for early estimate and unit price for detailed cost estimate. Learning objectives for today. First, we are going to list the components of a detailed cost estimate for the unit price cost estimates. And then we are going to walk you guys through the steps for detailed cost estimate. Then we are going to learn how we can apply RS means for detailed cost estimate. Let's first try to do a little bit of review. Based on what we learned from the previous lecture, we specifically talked about those 4 different methods. And in this graph, we know the unit price is located over here. Unit price can take weeks to complete depending on the size of a project. Again, this is not an absolute number. It's just for illustration purposes. And you have to have a detailed working plan and also specifications, detailed specifications telling exactly the quantity and also the quality of the construction work. Also, for cost estimating, it's not just one-time activity. We need to do multiple times throughout the project. But here, detailed cost estimate is located between procurement and construction. That's where contractors are going to submit their bid or just perform the cost estimating based on the working plans and specifications. The detailed cost estimates determine what the owner pays if there's no change happening on the construction project. But of course, if there are change orders, they are going to make the change orders on top of what you have already agreed upon. So there will be some renegotiation and change orders need to be submitted and approved by the owner. First, let's talk about the components of a detailed cost estimate. So there are 2 categories of costs. One is direct costs and the other one is indirect costs. So the direct costs include materials, labor, equipment, and subcontract. And so how to distinguish between direct costs and indirect costs? So from this category, the items listed under direct costs, we can see those are more visible. If you just look at a piece of a component in a construction project, if you look at the beam, you can definitely tell there's materials going into the beam, and then there's labor going into it, and then there's equipment needs to be used to pour the concrete or lift things up. And oftentimes students kind of omit this subcontract. Again, not all the work are done by the general contractors. So sometimes you have to sublet some of those work to those special contractors. They are in a better position to do those kind of work. So subcontracts are also part of your direct cost. And if you sublet part of the work to subcontract, when you try to do cost estimate, you just need to incorporate what they have already calculated and put a line item there. say this is a subcontract, and that is the part of your direct cost. For the indirect cost, we've got taxes, overhead and profit, contingency, and bounce. So those are less tangible, right? So as long as you're running the business, very likely those things are going to happen to the organization. So for example, you always have to pay taxes, and you have overhead and profits. As long as your company is running, you have to have some project management team who is going to manage whatever the whether the company or construction projects. You have to pay pay salaries to those kind of personnel. Contingency account for risks and bounds. That's also part of your indirect cost. In the next couple of slides, we're going to dive into those a little more.